Hello and welcome to my full moon reading. This full moon is in Aquarius, and we will see in the astrology that this full moon has a lot to do with power struggles, with power issues in relationships, whether it is collective or personal. But this is also visible in my cards, and the cards I have pulled for this full moon are Ereshkigal, Pallas Athena and Juno, Revolves and Jupiter. Also in my cards the theme is around shadow work. Ereshkigal is the sister of Inanna, and she sits in the underworld, and Inanna has to travel down to her, and Ereshkigal needs to be mourned. She needs a lot of compassion, a lot of awareness, and she feels not seen, she feels not heard, and because of that she is so angry. She gets very cruel towards Inanna. The laws of the underworld are different to our laws. The underworld is a place of transformation, and it is a frightening place, and the shadows in the underworld seem bigger than in our daily life, and we think that even the demons that might be there seem to be bigger than they really are. This has to do with the laws of the underworld. We have to surrender, and we have to maybe acknowledge that there is a lot that we are afraid of and that we are not sure, but what is real, but is it that bad? It is not wise to fight the demons or to fight the shadows. It is wise to be courageous and to be guided by your inner light. And in this full moon, what my cards say and what also the astrology says, luckily there is a light that will guide us. With Jupiter and with Revolves there is an ability to communicate, and with Pallas Athena and Juno we really want to communicate. We want to improve our relationships through communication. This communication will broaden our horizons. With Jupiter it means that this communication will bring a lot of value, will bring a lot of abundance, and this is also what all the journeys into the underworld talk about, and all the myths and all the legends, whether it is Ereshkigal or whether it is in other stories. It is all about that in the underworld or in this dark place, there you often find gold or jewelry. There is often a huge treasure for us. This transformation brings new life, and this is the biggest treasure of all. It brings new life and new abundance into our relationships. But we first have to confront the shadow. And it might be we have to confront the shadow in the relationship to us. We were not willing to see something in us that now we have to confront, or whether it is in our personal relationships or even in our collective relationships or in our inherited imprint of relationships, what we have learned from our parents, from our grandparents, what we have learned that relationship is and what it is actually not, what is just a pattern of relationship. And a pattern of relationship is not relationship itself. And I asked the cards, is there anything else you want to tell us? And this is really beautiful, because with Isis it really talks about the possibility for a huge healing. Isis for me is the goddess that brings healing through love, through the conviction that love will always win. Like in the Talmud it says, it only takes a candle to light the darkness. Sometimes we are so afraid of the darkness, but actually it only needs a tiny light to guide us through. And with Yule it also talks about a new beginning, and with guardian spirits the cards say you are protected. Trust that in this process of shadow work you are protected. And the interesting thing is that also the astrology talks about shadow work, that this full moon will bring us, or puts a spotlight on shadow work, because we have the moon conjunct Pluto and also Saturn. So the moon is in between Pluto and Saturn, and in a quincunx to Venus and Mars, and also conjunct the asteroid Hebe. And Hebe is an interesting asteroid because Hebe is the daughter of Zeus and Juno, and she brings nectar to the gods, so the fluid that makes the gods immortal. And she stands for eternal youth. And Hebe therefore can stand for relationships that are abusive. In ancient times, kings had a lot of very young lovers, and it was not only for sexual attraction, it was also because they knew that if they have sex with very young boys or girls, then the probability that they will live longer is higher, because they unite with a lot of fresh prana and fresh chi, fresh life force. So it was not only a sexual abuse, but it was an abuse of life force. I mean, sexuality has to do with life force. So in these relationships, when someone is really, really young and someone is old, there is this abuse because there is too much imbalance of life force. And Hebe talks about that, and because the moon is conjunct Hebe, Pluto and Saturn, and in a Qincunx to Venus and Mars, I would suggest that this full moon not only puts a light on personal abuse or abuse in personal relationships, but also abuse in the collective. The way abuse is normal, the way abuse is mainstream, and where there is a light on where is it that we actually take, like for example, also the first world takes a lot of resources from the third world, and this is also a form of huge abuse in this world and in the collective field of humanity. So this is also a form of relating and of abusive relating and things we are used to. With Pluto, Saturn, it often has to do with things we are used to, and we have to change that structures that need to get pushed down, that need to be destroyed, that need to be transformed. It is a shadow work that says we have to transform. Juno and the asteroid Union is on the south node, opposing Iris conjunct the north node. Well, it is also about personal relationship with Union and with Juno. It is about the abuse we are used to in personal relationships, and it is about the abuse we are used to in the collective, or even, as I said, abuse we inherited from our grandfathers and great-grandfathers. So the abuse we have learned in our collective, how we have to treat each other, and also how we have to treat ourselves, because we sometimes forget that the first relationship we have is with ourselves. And the beauty is that the asteroid Iris has to do with communication with other dimensions. Iris is the goddess of the rainbow, and the rainbow is the bridge between the worlds, between higher dimensions and this world. And she invites us to really open us to the communication with higher dimensions of ourselves, and to allow these higher dimensions to guide us through this darkness, and to let go. I mean, one of the laws of the underworld is let go, surrender. You have to surrender to be anew, and what you have learned you are, or what you have learned your relationship is, or what you have learned your status is not who you are. Remember that all life is sacred. Everyone holds the spark of the divine, and this spark of the divine is in the end what connects us. In the end, all is one. Iris is connected to this oneness and to this communication out of oneness, and this invitation to heal through oneness and to be guided by oneness. The Qincunx to Venus and Mars says, well, it's not that visible. It is like something itching on your back, and you don't know, and you might need a mirror to see, well, what's going on, what's itching there. It takes effort to realize, but what's wrong here? This itching just shows that there is something wrong, and with Hebe there is a huge imbalance, and Hebe and Pluto together, I mean Hebe and Pluto together is like the theme of abuse on steroids. Is kind of, there is a huge abuse in relationships going on, and with Hebe and Pluto it often has to do with sexuality, but I would say it goes beyond sexuality, or it is what sexuality also symbolizes, life force. So there is a theme around the abuse of life force in our collective, the way we treat each other, that is very abusive, and it is not serving the sacred in us as well as around us, and we are here to serve in the end. So I would say this full moon will have a little bit of tension, but it is beautiful that this graceful asteroid Iris is conjunct the North Node in Gemini, so we are able to communicate gracefully. And with Jupiter and Retrograde and Pallas Athena and Una, I would say this full moon or this confrontation can bring new life in our relationships with ourselves and with others, and this can bring a huge healing. And we should never forget, with guardian spirits we are protected in this process. We are protected if we really connect with this rainbow bridge. And with Iris at the North Node in Gemini, I would say it is also about a new form of communication. And as in my cards with Jupiter and Retrograde here, with this new form of communication, with grace in our communication, because Iris is connected to the rainbow bridge, to the bridge of grace. And if we learn to communicate with more grace with ourselves and others, then we might be able to bring the treasure, that this underworld journey that we are confronted with this full moon, we will be able to bring this treasure home with us. So most of all, I wish you a very graceful communication with yourself and with everything and everyone that is around you, so that we all can share a space of grace. Till next time, Namaste.